Hello, everyone. So anyone who can't attend, there will be a recording available of this webinar as well. So we will start straight away and then people may join throughout the webinar. So firstly, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Jim and I work for Scanning Pens and I am the secondary business manager and I am also dyslexic myself as well. So I'm doing an end part around Scanning Pens, talking about dyslexia and some of the training we have on the reader pens as well, very quickly for you guys. But the main event, the main person today is Rachel. I'm really excited to introduce Rachel Ingham to talk about some of the courses she does in line with Patos. I'm really excited to hear about them myself as well. And I just want to thank Rachel for coming along today. So thank you ever so much for taking the time out to do this webinar, Rachel. And I'll pass that over to you.
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Rachel Ingham. I work for Send Solutions, and in conjunction with Patos, we've written an online course which is available for all members of staff, teaching assistants, teachers, Senko, senior leadership, and also available for parents too. So if I just click to the next slide and just explain that this is, although a short presentation, we've just 20 minutes together, it's a three-phase presentation. So initially I'm going to provide an overview of the course that Send Solutions and Patos have developed. And then I'm going to move into what is dyslexia and maybe dispel a couple of misconceptions, just so we're all on the same page. What does dyslexia mean and how do we visualize and pick up on those cues in the classroom? Very importantly, strategies to support learners with dyslexia. These are a few strategies that are included within a very, very comprehensive course, but admittedly, obviously, there's only a few we can potentially cover. But I will give you as many as I possibly can. And then finally, I'm going to hand back to Jim, and he's going to show you best practice in relation to scanning pens and supporting students with dyslexia. And I'm actually going to jump on the bandwagon there with you, Jim. I also have dyslexia. So not only did I grow up as the child in the classroom with dyslexia, so have that first-hand experience, but I was a teacher as well, a Senko, an inclusion consultant for a local authority, a lecturer at my MMU, and now I write and develop courses nationally for several organisations. But our focus here is very much around the Patos course. And I'm just going to move right. Okay, so there's a quote here. We had a pilot after completing the course, and I've just included a quote from a classroom teacher, but also inclusion manager. And while you're reading that, I'm going to talk about the online course. So, as I've said, it's available for everybody, including parents, including everybody within the educational context. And it's written so that it supports learners at both primary and secondary sectors. It has been developed with good practice in mind, as we should do. So it is very accessible. It is very interactive. So there's a lot of theory there that backs up the content, but it's also reflective, and it provides an awful lot of strategies that you can implement easily within the classroom setting, as well as from an intervention point of view as well. So the benefits include high quality teaching practice, those adaptive practices that we are making on a moment to moment basis, but also those planned adaptive strategies as well. It is, as I've said, available for all staff, but it also supports whole school practice as well, in terms of providing that consistent practice across all members of staff. In fact, one of the quotes that we did get back from the pilot was Asenko was going to utilise everything she'd learnt within the course to improve the CPD across the whole of the school. And we certainly know that the greater our awareness of all specific learning difficulties, but here we're talking about dyslexia, increases confidence in practitioners, particularly when they know that the strategies that are being used are well-founded. Couple of other important factors. It is a level 2 and a level 3 course. All the years I have spent delivering training, conference speeches, one of the priority questions has always been from teachers and teaching assistants is there a course that I could do that isn't at level 7? Can I get an accreditation for the knowledge and understanding that I have in relation to dyslexia? And we have answered that question through this course. So the level 2 course is that you complete all 5 modules within the course, and there are quizzes embedded into that particular course, which will give you level 2. You can also upgrade that to a level 3 qualification or CPD by completing an 800-word practical reflection using the Code of Practice's graduated approach to demonstrate how you've utilised the strategies, recognised learners with difficulties within your own school context. So let's have a quick look at those modules. The 5 modules encompassing, first of all, neurodiversity and dyslexia. We know that a child with dyslexia, it is the rule rather than the exception that they will have another specific learning difficulty. So that module looks deeply at dyslexia, but also other SPLDs such as dyscalculia and ADHD, and how we identify those needs and meet those needs within the classroom setting. Module 2, the impact of dyslexia on phonics and reading. So around those strategies, learning to read and reading to learn, and how we can provide that access for our learners with dyslexia, which actually improves access for all learners. Then the focus is around writing, obviously including spelling, but the broader implications of writing too, which leads into a module on learning environments. What are we doing in the classroom? How would I recognise when I walk into your classroom that it is a dyslexia-friendly classroom? What am I going to see? What am I going to hear? And meeting those broader needs around working memory, self-esteem, in addition to develop independence through developing metacognition within your learners. And then finally, the 5th module looks at those interventions and monitoring good progress. You can access more details around the course using the link. You will all receive the slides that I am using. And as I move through, let's have a quick look at what do we mean by dyslexia. This is an abridged version because I just want to concentrate on specific cognitive processes and the result of those. So dyslexia is a learning difficulty that primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluent reading and spelling. We're all very, very familiar with that. But what I do want to focus on is those characteristic features of dyslexia. So the cognitive processing, phonological awareness difficulties, which we know in every case, if a child has phonological awareness processing difficulties, they will struggle to read, they will struggle to spell. In addition to that, we've got verbal short-term memory problems for these learners and verbal processing speeds. Now, those obviously impact into those literacy skills, but in addition to that, there's a broader implication in terms of how's that going to actually affect the whole of their learning experience and how they're processing information. But this is the point at which I want to dispel a particular myth. When I'm working within schools, there is a predominant misconception that a child with dyslexia needs a coloured overlay. And I want to really impress upon you at this particular juncture that that is a different area of specific learning difficulty. It is in relation to visual difficulties. So the movement there of, I'm a bit hesitant to actually.
I have the video. I've embedded it for you. Do you want me to put it on there for you? Yeah, I saw the presentation and I thought I'd put it in. I think it's this one here from YouTube.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Jim. So just going to go back to the presentation, if that's possible. That's super. Okay. So as qualified professionals, we have SAS guidance in relation to what we should be doing in relation to identifying visual difficulties, and importantly, what we shouldn't be doing as well. So terminology such as visual stress, Erlin's syndrome should not be being used anymore. And any specialist teacher or specialist diagnostic assessors should not be diagnosing visual difficulties either. The point at which visual difficulties may be suspected, what we should be doing as professionals, all of us, is ensuring that that diagnosis of visual difficulties is done through an optometrist, through a professional optometrist, and that it is not being assessed using coloured overlays. That is no longer applicable or appropriate. So the terminology we absolutely must be using is visual difficulties, and there should be a correct diagnosis. I think one of the reasons we've had the misconception is that actually children with and young people with dyslexia can co-occur with visual difficulties. So we can see where that misconception has arrived from. The important part is that we make a distinction between the two and meet the needs of children with dyslexia who have phonological processing difficulties, verbal short-term memory difficulties, and verbal processing speed difficulties. Unfortunately, I've gone the wrong way there, Jim, but I am just going to... Okay, thank you. So let's have a look at those strategies, shall we? And I'm going to start, first of all, with reading, which is the area that is looked at in Module 2. It's a vast area, obviously. And I'm going to talk about jigsaw reading, how we can actually improve our classroom practice to enable learners with dyslexia and all learners to access text. Jigsaw reading is when we provide a text that is cut up into paragraphs, or it could be sentences, depending on the quantity of information you are providing. And in small mixed groups, so different levels of ability, pupils, students reassemble that particular text and they're reading it together. It enables more complex text to be accessed by pupils who maybe haven't got as high a reading skill or as accurate as fluent reading skills as other members of the classroom. While they're reassembling that text, they're discussing, they are looking also at the cohesive elements of the text as well. So they're getting a very, very good understanding of the text. But it's not as simple as that, is it? We also need to interpret the text individually. So as a group, they can take that information, put it into a mind map, put it into a flow chart, whatever is appropriate to the learner's needs, but also the content of the text. And importantly, because we know there's a co-occurrence level between dyslexia and developmental language disorder at about 50% of learners, It's a very, very useful task to actually have word experts. So the pupils in groups allot a particular word that they haven't understood clearly, and each of those learners investigates that particular word and becomes the word expert and teaches it to the rest of the group. Very powerful, because they're teaching it using vocabulary that they understand. And I think one of my most favourite moments was a geography lesson where I saw a boy say, right, okay, my word is meander. So what I want us to do as a group is we're going to stand in a row and we're going to pretend to be a river. And I'm going to create a meander. So he took one of the girls' hands and they looped the straight line, and he looked at the group and just said, "That's me and And what a powerful way of remembering a word. So those sorts of multisensory visual links created by children are really going to help that support of development of vocabulary through reading as well. But what about writing? I think one of the trickiest issues around writing is motivating reluctant writers. So I'm going to give you a few tips here. First of all, purpose. Do they understand the purpose of what they're doing? And first juncture is, can they actually verbalize the genre of the writing that they have to perform? So whether it be entertaining somebody, informing somebody, or persuading, bring it into real life situations. Ask a pupil, can you remember when you last persuaded somebody to do something? Get them to use that language and then link it to the persuasive text that you're expecting them to write at the end of the lesson. Record the vocabulary while that's happening as well, because that vocabulary will be important for that piece of writing. Because what we want is for learners to understand they're evoking a reaction for somebody else or in somebody else. And the reaction could be laughter. It could be that we are going to ensure that the person who's reading their text is really thinking about it or persuaded into doing something. So purpose is important, but process is important too. So moving from one to the other, I think one of those key elements in my career is understanding that not just pupils, but also students often didn't understand the process of the writing. So provide a visual replica of that process from planning through to editing and proofreading, so they can see those steps that are involved in it. Make sure that they understand that we all follow that process. It's not unique to the classroom setting. We all have to plan and draft and monitor and evaluate, etc., to produce the best piece of writing. But often for our learners with dyslexia, it's that final part of editing and proofreading that is really the bridge too far, or the step too far for them. And one of the ways I've got them to encourage, or got learners to encourage them to do that, is to ask them to hand in the work before they proofread it. I would mark it and then provide them with the result, and then give them the opportunity, based on the feedback that I'd given them, to actually improve that piece of writing, so they could see the investment in actually taking the time to proofread, to revisit, to provide a better text. And another area that I think is really worth promoting, because they don't often understand the importance of planning. Planning is a really valuable tool for all of us. But if you think about the child with dyslexia, if they plan, they've got all their thoughts and ideas out, and that releases their working memory to be able to focus on this complex task of writing and being able to produce, therefore, a better piece of writing at the end. So they don't have to hold on to all that information. Finally, I'm going to link here to the fourth module, thinking about good classroom practice, thinking about the verbal short-term memory difficulties and those difficulties around speed of processing and the difficulties around developmental language disorder. So if you've got a pen or paper, that's useful. If not, please just listen. And I'm going to ask you, please, to write your Christian name in the middle of the material on which you write. If it has more than one ascender, put a sphere in the left corner, unless before you turn in tonight, you will have ingested more than 1,020 kilocalories since your first meal today. As an example of an instruction that is clearly ridiculous. So we need to be thinking very carefully about the way we deliver information, making sure that it is accessible to all learners and they can. Now, I think this might be a problem. I've just realised that the information behind that particular visual, I need, please, Jim, if that's possible, to remove that visual. The slow down clip. While Jim maybe is doing that, I'm going to highlight the fact that we need to think very carefully about the language we're using. Make sure, and at the instruction element, we need to be thinking about them accessing. We're not developing tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary. We're allowing them to access. Chunk that information, maximum of 3 instructions, and then go back and revisit that information and revisit the instruction in exactly the same way. If I look back at my previous practice, if my learners hadn't understood an instruction that I was giving them, I would phrase it in a different way. That's not useful if they haven't understood it, because now you've integrated more information, you've said it in a different way, you've used different vocabulary. So make sure that you can repeat it in exactly the same way. And that's a very, very good rule of thumb for us as teachers, because if we can't repeat the instruction in exactly the same way, then they aren't able to do that either. And I will, when you get these slides, I will ask Jim to actually remove the picture that you can see there, because when we think about, so you can see the points beneath it. When we think about processing, we need to slow down so they can access what we're saying and achieve the tasks that we are giving them. And I think a really nice little, maybe a bit gimmicky, but we always had a sign. So I would actually ask my learners, have you understood? Do you need me to revisit that? And we used to use a little microwave so that they could discreetly and visually let me know if they felt confident about the task. And that just takes moments to do. So I'm now going to pass over to Jim, and he's going to give you an overview of scanning pens and how they support learners with dyslexia.
There we go. Sorry, Rachel, I was just trying to get your slides ready then. I didn't know there was something actually behind it. So thank you ever so much for doing that. That was absolutely amazing. Are you sticking around at all if people want to ask you a few questions? Because that was really, really interesting for myself actually as well. And I imagine a lot of people will be interested to hear more stuff that you'd have to say, especially drawing on your knowledge and experience. I found it really interesting. So thank you ever so much for that. And I can relate so much. And one question I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, I don't want to put you too much on the spot, was something that I come across a lot with schools talking to them, and actually my own personal experience. And you talked about strategies, and something I wanted to ask is, when someone's quite a reluctant reader, especially us boys who don't want to be seen looking different with, say, technology, or being seen as if we're having help or support to help us with our reading, do you know of any strategies to help these students, or how can we help those kind of people to persuade them to kind of engage more? Or if you do have any solutions at all. Sorry to put you on the spot. I just thought it's quite a relatable question to me actually as well, because I was that person who sat there quite quiet. I didn't want to ask for help, and I knew I was struggling, but I didn't.
I think that is such a common factor, Jim. And you know, we need to also think about self-esteem. So there's an awful lot actually currently in relation to advice to support reading within the classroom coming from the Education Endowment Foundation. How's it accessed? And on all that whole class reading And actually, the conclusions are that actually sitting and moving from one reader to another to read out loud isn't the most beneficial way for learners to access text, because it overloads the cognitive processing, because what we're expecting learners to do is both listen but follow the text. So it's not useful for anybody. And actually, I'm delighted that the EF have moved away from that whole class teaching perspective, because and you'll absolutely empathise with this, Jim, for us, sitting there knowing that at some point we are going to be asked to read creates an enormous amount of anxiety. And what I found I was doing as the pupil was I would be trying to, particularly if it was moving from one person to another around the classroom in a particular system, I would try to read ahead in order to be able to practice that and be ready for the moment I was asked to read. Not only was I therefore not engaging with any of the other text that was being read, but I was hyper anxious. So from that point, I really do want to throw that in. And in fact, the premise is now that we should be having those opportunities for silent reading. And now I'm going to pick up on your point, Jim. During that silent reading, have you differentiated the text so that everybody can access that particular piece of writing or the reading that is expected of them? Have you thought about the vocabulary that's being used? Because what we want everybody to do in that classroom setting is to be able to access the text and then come back and then draw on each other's reading, knowledge and understanding of what they have actually read through whole class discussion. And I mean discussion, not Q&A. So I think that would be my first point of call. There is a very useful website called Readability Formulas, and it's a free website. We can cut and paste text that we have provided for our learners, and it will give you the age and the flesh score so that you can see whether it's appropriate for your learners and certainly for those with dyslexia. So I think that probably encapsulates, in terms of that inclusive, high quality practice, enabling our learners to access the text we're expecting them to read.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. I did want to put you on the spot. I thought you might have an answer or a solution definitely for that kind of problem. And it's something that really relates to me. And when I ask it, it's not just for teachers that I've spoken to within my job role, but it is actually a question. And something that you said to me, the silent reading or getting ready and feeling anxious, actually my reaction personally was to get either sent out of the classroom or to pretend I need the toilet and just wait for the lesson to end or not turn up for that lesson. And I know it's wrong, but in my head, if I knew it was coming up, my time to talk, I would stutter. I would just know I'd be sweating. My hands would be just full of sweat. It was just, I knew it was happening and I'd be like, sweating straight away. And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to go. I can't do this. And that was my automatic reaction to it. And it's something we come across a lot, isn't it, really, still? Yeah. And I know teachers do the best they can. And it's just hard to get out of that mindset, isn't it, sometimes?
Absolutely.
Right, guys. So what I will do is share with you a quick bit about scanning pens. A lot of you already know about us already and know about our pens. But what I want to do is link it in nicely with this course a little bit, actually, and how this can help. So I'm going to show you one of our pens called the Reader Pen and talk about it with you guys. And then at the end, so we'll have about 10 minutes of me talking. And at the end, we'll have 5 minutes to ask Rachel and myself any questions. Is that okay, Rachel?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. So I'll switch over to my slide. So who scanning pens are. So this may interest you if any of you are. So basically we have a charity called Succeed with Dyslexia. So it's completely different to scanning pens and it's around motivational videos. We've run free competitions and it's called Succeed with Dyslexia. And you can see there in that picture, we have the shirts on there. And I've actually done my own podcast. It's around my educational journey, some of the coping mechanisms that I I've used across school and at university, and some of the technology I use that's helped me. And it's on there as well. So it's free to listen. So please feel free to go to our website, Succeed with Dyslexia, or go to our Twitter, hashtag Succeed with Dyslexia, and you'll see some fantastic tools and resources that we have available for you. So as I was speaking, I'm dyslexic. Sometimes I talk a little bit about myself and dyslexia in some of these quotes. And Rachel, you've probably seen them before or heard people say them. And one of my famous quotes, and I even say this now to my wife, who slaps me around the back of my head, where I say, I'm not smart enough. And she says, that's absolutely untrue. Just look what you do in your job role and how far you've come. And I get a slap around the back of the head when I say it. And it's horrible because it's just an automatic reaction. It's something I just say. I can't. When I don't understand something, and I've done it 4 or 5 times in my head, and I still don't get that word, I just come out and say this word straight away. And the wife slaps me and says, "What you doing?" You know. And I have learned over time to kind of move away from these comments and take dyslexia as a superpower, really, as something. I see myself as someone who's really creative, and I come up with all these new ideas, like these webinars that we do, bringing in these guests with experience and knowledge to talk about, not just me talking about the pens, but bringing in something new. And that's where, you know, I feel I really benefit from. And I found that nothing has stopped me. You see how many famous people are dyslexic as well, and it does take me longer. But, you know, I have got through it. I've been to university. I've got a degree. I'm now in this amazing job where I'm able to promote and empower people about our technology. So I just like to bring these quotes up and show you that probably your students, they're not alone, because I still say these comments sometimes. And to let you into a little secret, a word I can't spell, and I have to say it all the time in this job role, is assessments. I can't say it. I can't spell it unless I've got spell check on. There's so many S's in it. I always get it wrong. So a little bit about the pens and what they do. A lot of you already know what they do. So the main premise of them is they scan over printed text and read it aloud. So they can scan over the coloured overlay. So your green, my favourite colour was salmon, like a pink colour, and that's probably uncommon, but it was kind of one of my favourite colours to use. And basically what they do is they scan over. As you lift up the pen, it then reads aloud back to you. So you have your headphones plugged in, you see the text on the screen, and you hear it aloud. So I know, imagine a lot of you have the pen that's specifically designed for examinations. So it's JCQ approved. And we recently did a webinar with the Patos guys talking about assessments. But I wanted to show you the reader pen. This is a device used for everyday use, for that home learning as well, but also for every lessons. And Rachel kind of said about it in geography lessons, for example. You know, students who with dyslexia, we know what it's saying, but we just can't get that question out there. We want to read it. We really want to understand what it's saying. And the reader pen's a perfect tool. Just because it can't be used in examinations doesn't mean it can't be used for the everyday lessons. And especially for those students who are year 7, year 8, year 9, or you're just thinking about transitioning from year 6 and year 7. You've missed out so much of school already, and you want to catch up with your other students, and you need that support. And that's where the reader pen comes in, because it has that dictionary on. It has scan to file on there. It has a recorder feature. All of these features can incorporate these activities for you. It can help you significantly, especially learning new vocabulary as well. And sometimes learning new words takes me so long, but with a dictionary on there, that could really help me. So basically all you do with the pen is you scan the word on the dictionary mode, and on there on the dictionary, you see the word, and then it repeats the definition back to you. And I've toggled through the pen, and we have a mode called the Oxford Primary Dictionary and the Collins Dictionary. The Oxford Primary Dictionary, yes, it's for primary sector, but actually there's some real scope for secondary sector as well, because sometimes you just want a really quick definition simplified for you straight away. And that's where you can toggle between these dictionary modes. And what's great about the dictionary is on the pen, it has a hard drive an 8 gigabyte storage on there. So actually, if you forget the vocab that you've learned on that day, you can actually click on the menu, click history, and you can actually see all the recent words that you've scanned that day, or even the last couple of weeks. So it saves them on there, and then you can go ahead and delete them as well. So it's a really fantastic tool that you can use for activities as well. And I know with my memory, I need to go back in. I forget words very easily. I can go into the dictionary mode, or your students can go in and look at all of the recent words that they've used and start using it as an activity in the classroom as well. Finally, the last couple of features we have on the pen is the scan to file and recorder. So how can this help? So the scan to file is basically the way you access the memory. So you have 8 gigabyte storage that you save onto the pen, and then you can listen back to it later on, or you can actually upload it onto your computer screen or laptop. And it's the way that you create that bridge between that paper to the pen. So you're actually creating you can actually capture that data. So you don't actually need to download PDFs, for example. You can just capture that data with your pen and get it uploaded to your computer. And then you can start to use programs like Immersive Reader, Read and Write Gold to help you out with that. The last feature I wanted to explain was the recorder feature. So the recorder is basically a simplified dictaphone. So you can just record voice clips on there as MP4 or WAV files. Maybe you can record some activities on there for the student to help them, especially those students who are auditory learners. Pardon me, it's a fantastic feature that's located on the Reader Pen. And as I've mentioned, the Reader Pen can't be used in examinations at school. The reason for that, it has that dictionary, dictaphone and storage. And it's just a fantastic tool to help those year 7, year 8, year 9 students, I feel, that you can take around as a personalised pen just for that student and use it for everyday lessons. That's the most important part that I feel there. And what it does is it creates independence and gives you that confidence that you can actually answer that question for yourself instead of having someone maybe read it back to you, or maybe looking a little bit different. The pen was designed really to be quite discreet. As you've seen from the picture, the diagram there is quite small. It's actually designed to look like a writing pen or like a highlighter when you're using it as well. And with the headphones plugged in, you're not distracting others and you're fully engaged in what you're listening to. And what I've seen going around classrooms, and I could go round the classrooms, was that what they were doing is they'd have one headphone out and one headphone in. So actually they were listening to the teacher, but they were also doing their handouts. So they were using the pen to scan them handouts and listen back to it, but they were also engaging in the classroom as well. So the pen can be for left and right-handed people. So those left-handed people, you can change it in the settings to left-handed as well. And all this does is it flips the screen. So it's upside down for anyone right-handed. It's in the correct way for anyone left-handed. And you can scan left to right, right to left. So when you scan backwards, you actually find it's better to scan backwards as a left-handed person. So you're not pushing with the pen, you're pulling. It gives you a nice flow when using the pen as well. And it will still read from the natural side that you would normally read from as well. We do have a website, readerpen.co.uk as well. So feel free to go to our website and have a look at the pen as well. And there's some fantastic case studies, research and videos on there to help with that as well. So I'm conscious of time as well, and I want people to ask questions to Rachel as well, because I'm really interested to hear her answers actually from her experience as well. Finally, what I wanted to do, because a lot of you already have the pens as well and you wanted to learn a bit more. So if you are interested in the Reader Pen as well, we do have some fantastic resources that we've created by my colleague Julia. These are resources that help aid with the training and actually give you some fun learning activities as well. So what the Helping Hands Detective Agency is they're fun stories that you would read along using your Reader Pen. And then what you would do is you'd have activities. So it'll say, scan this word, use the dictionary mode to access these different words, and then you'd read it back using your Reader Pen as well, or your exam reader if you do have exam readers as well. This is free to download from our website, and I'll pop the website in the bottom here as well. But basically, it just helps you to engage that student A, and B, it gives you that training as well. So you're getting the practice, you're getting that activity, and you're incorporating some training as well with that. And this is completely free to download. And as you go through the booklet, the stories get a little bit harder. So there's levels to this story to help you. And this is created by Julia, who's our head of education, who's been similar to Rachel in a role, being a Senko as well. And she just offers her knowledge and experience to create these resources, which is really exciting for all of us here at Scanning Pens as well. And if any of you do have some pens already, please look at our free implementation guide, which is basically your how-to guide, how to access the pen, the different diagrams of the pen, like each setting that you have available for it, how you access the left and right-handed mode, and also finally the last settings, which is auto read, and the other setting, which is word pause. So I know this is a great feature as well. So what you do is you scan over a line, and as you lift up the pen, it reads it back in one go. Well, actually, some students want that pause between each word. So we have a feature called word pause, which gives you up to 4 seconds where it pauses by each word. So it'll go the, cat, sat, and it breaks up that sentence and actually makes that comprehension much easier to understand. So on the pens, you can actually personalize that. So you can have a couple of seconds pause between each word. Personal recommendation, you only need 1 to 2 seconds to do that as well. And finally, if you are interested and you would like a 30-day free trial, please feel free to go to our website or email me directly at jim@scanningpens.com, and you can get a free 30-day trial on the Reader Pen as well. And this recording will be available to all of you, and the presentation and the leaflet for Rachel's courses will be sent to all of you who registered and everyone that attended today. So what I will do is I'll open the floor up for anyone who has any questions to ask Rachel whilst she's here, if she doesn't mind. If not, I will ask her some questions. But thank you ever so much for everyone attending the webinar today. And thank you, Rachel, for your time again. Thank you ever so much.
It's a pleasure.
Can you see the questions at the bottom, Rachel? Do you want me to read them back to you?
I need you to read them back to me. I'm just, I can't process that fast enough. Usually it's much better. Can we give anybody a mic, maybe?
It makes it quite difficult. I'll say them out to you, no problem at all.
Thank you.
For you. Francis has basically said, as a TA, it's the best option to support a student with class who may not want pinpoint and they're finding it difficult. I work with a student who does like to use his overlay or different coloured paper as he feels he'll get picked on. I can see he's finding it difficult looking back and forth to get the writing on the board copied down. I'm providing them a printout from a teacher, but it does make him feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Have you any tips to help ease his anxieties, but also making things a little bit easier?
Yeah, absolutely. So being highly aware of that as a teacher, I made it part of just good inclusive practice. So it wasn't just one child getting a handout. They went out to every pupil so that you're not discriminating from one child or another. I'm not going to focus back down onto the overlays because obviously I've made that distinction that despite the fact I know a lot about it, that is not dyslexia, but it falls into the same category of just good practice. So, for example, if we print, the avoidance is using black text on white. So to ameliorate those contrasts for all pupils, actually, don't print black text on white paper. Use pastels or creams. Dark blue is very good as a font colour, but also think about your fonts as well. So opt for a more visually friendly font. What you're trying to do is lose the serifs. So fonts such as, Comic Sans is commonly used in the primary sector, and that's appropriate. But I know that many practitioners don't like to use it above and beyond primaries. So Tahoma will be useful as an example. But thinking about the font you're using, it's about reducing the quantity of information. Another useful tip would be if you're printing out information for learners within the classroom setting, instead of having dense text, provide handouts that have bullet points so that they can visualize very quickly how many points there are in relation to that particular part of the learning. And it is much, much easier for them to access. Another quick one is always justify to the left, never fully justify, because we're using the triggers of the tracker down the right-hand side, and there's indentations to support that ability to move from one line to another. And that goes if we fully adjust the writing on a particular document. So hopefully those points are going to support the teaching assistant who actually asked a very good question.
I have a few people typing, so a lot of people are thanking you for it, and a few people saying that they like the Dyslexia font as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have any other questions at all they would like to ask Rachel? Please do pop them in if you have any questions. How much are the courses, Rachel?
Gosh, I'm going to quote my husband, I don't do money. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but if you go to the link that's provided on the slides, all that additional information is there. I could guess at it, but I really don't want to. If I could just highlight, though, that one of the important parts is that you can individually sign up for the course, or as a school, you could take several places, and I know that the fee will be reduced for that. Equally so, maybe you have a cluster of schools that want to get involved, so you've got that good practice disseminated across the whole cluster, and you might opt to have one teacher, one TA, and the Senko from each of those schools. And again, if you do that, then you will be able to access the course at a discounted price because you're buying several places.
And then how long? Been asked how long the courses are as well.
Okay, no, I can actually do that. So in terms of study time, I've got that information in front of me and I didn't share it. But we've got the level 2 course, it is 13 hours study time. So that engagement with the 5 modules. The modules are actually 1 hour long, but embedded within them are all those reflective tasks that I mentioned, and your quizzes as well. So the study time equates to 13 hours. I just want to throw in an additional point here as well, before I look at the level 3. All of the courses also come with a wealth of additional signposts too, useful information, videos, everything that you need to support what's being delivered within those modules. The level 3 course, it's exactly the same materials that you will be working with. The only addition is that you will be providing the written reflection of your good practice using neurodiversity to identify a pupil and provide those support strategies for that individual pupil using the graduated approach from the SEND Code of Practice. So it fits straight into good practice, what's happening within the school context. And that equates to 33 hours of study time. I do have to say, obviously, if you write very quickly, that will reduce the quantity of time. But that as an estimate, we'd expect 33 hours.
Fantastic. Thank you. We have someone typing. Great. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you ever so much, Rachel, again, for coming on and speaking today on your courses. They do look amazing, actually. They look fantastic, and I feel they'll really help people, and your knowledge and experience will really benefit people. So thank you ever so much, everybody. I know there's a few people who've emailed and that haven't been able to get in contact, been able to get onto the webinar, which is a shame. But we do have a free recording available for everybody. So everyone will emailed Rachel's details in terms of the course and how to get onto the courses as well. And I'll also send over a recording to everybody as well, so you can share that with your colleagues. Brilliant. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Rachel, for your time. Thank you ever so much.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, brilliant, guys. Thank you.